Yeah, it was impressive, an impressive performance. Everyone played well. I don't think anyone had a really bad game. I saw McTominay play well for the first time in God knows how long. Fred had a good game. Obviously, you say Rashford was fantastic, and Bruno was up there again. So I really can't complain about any of the players. It just goes to show what you can do if you have the right tactics, and if you're playing against a petulant, arrogant, snobby PSG side.
Yeah, that was a talk coming into the game, wasn't it? That it was a big ego-driven side that United were coming up against. Now, Henry, I'll come to you. What are your initial reactions to the game?
Yeah, just to be honest, just another brilliant big game performance from an Ole United side. It's was getting used to it really. Obviously, we've had the odd blip. Obviously, a lot of people pointing to sort of the semi-finals last season. Obviously, the Spurs game a couple weeks ago was obviously a disaster, but a fantastic reaction last night. As you say, one of the best performances I've seen in quite a while. It was complete from sort of start to finish. As you say, every player did sort of put a shift in. Really. I thought McTominay in the first half maybe a little bit sloppy here and there, but then after that sorted it out. It might have been to do with his contact lenses that apparently came out in the first half. But no, he sorted it out really well, and it was fantastic. Him and Fred in midfield, tenacious as ever in the big European games. Sort of get used to seeing that sort of that midfield pairing just playing well in European games. We saw it obviously at PSG last time out, and I remember the home leg of Barcelona as well. We obviously lost 1-0 those two playing really well. Obviously, hard to find any faults in the performance whatsoever. A brilliant performance from David De Gea, who I've backed back to the hills through all these sort of tough times, and sort of came to fruition last night. It's sort of a vintage De Gea performance. Didn't look like conceding at all. It was fantastic. Obviously, he did concede the own goal. Unfortunate for Martial, that one flicking in and going in. But yeah, apart from that, it's hard to find any faults. A truly brilliant performance. But yeah, fantastic in every sense of the word.
Yeah, brilliant performance. I was I was blown away. What a night indeed.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you say, the first thing I wanted to talk about really was Scott McTominay and Fred, because look, going into the game, I saw that midfield pairing and I was worried. I won't lie to you. I was very worried. And, first 20, 30 minutes, Neymar looked like he was going to run the show, but showing a lot of his trademark silky dribbling. But, after McTominay, he picked up that yellow card, and then he seemed to sort of calm down in a way, him and Fred, and sort of marked Neymar and co out of the game. So, Hennes, sorry, I'll come to you. How impressed were you by that partnership, especially given the players that were left on the bench for the game?
Yeah, well, this is a big slice of humble pie for me, because all I've done is criticise those two for the last 6 months. Yeah, no, they had a good performance, and it was nice because I know Neymar got on the ball in the first 20 minutes, but as soon as you hoon him up in the air, he ain't getting anywhere. He just goes into a shell. So the best thing to do with Neymar, because he's such a wet, is just kick him, and it would just mark him out of the game. And as soon as he gets involved in physical battles, he's done for. So yeah, I was impressed by McTominay and Fred. Fred was his usual. I've always called him busy, and that's what he is. He's not a fantastic player, but he's busy and he does the right thing, and it matched up well, because I thought Danilo for them was absolutely terrible. I'm debating whether they even should have bought him in the first place or loan with an obligation to buy or something. I think they've got. Herrera was okay, but no real attacking threat. And Idrissa Gueye, I don't even know if he was on the pitch. I didn't see him really. So, but from McTominay and Fred, really impressive. McTominay was winning battles in the middle of the pitch, which he's obviously very strong and very tall. So you'd expect him to do that. But yeah, really impressed. And we can't forget that we've got to follow this performance up with a win on Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. I think their midfield selection, especially the lack of attacking threat, very much played into our hands. I'll come to you then, Henry. Do you think the reason, the absentees from their team and the squad selection they went for, massively played into our hands, or do you think it was a lot of our own doing, the reason that we won the game?
It's a good question, really. I think the midfield of PSG is obviously a massive weak point for them when they haven't got sort of a deep line playmaker like Paredes or Verratti sort of in that midfield, you can see that they struggle to create things. I'm sort of surprised they didn't maybe start Pablo Sarabia as sort of like a roaming 8 really in that midfield, but he obviously came off the bench and didn't do much. But yeah, I think you've got to give credit to United where it's due, despite the sort of subpar personnel of that PSG midfield. You got to give credit, as you say, to Fred and McTominay for thwarting them. Just did absolutely excellently. So yeah, I think it's a mix of the two really, but I think you've got to give credit to United where it's due. The tactics were just excellent. Defensively, really solid. The back five worked an absolute treat. Luke Shaw, continuing to surprise me playing in that back five. Looks sort of more at home as a sort of a third centre back than he does at left back, which is somewhat strange. And obviously Axel Tuanzebe was an absolute mammoth last night. So yeah, no, it's you got to give credit to United, I think, where it's due.
Absolutely, yes. Now, Henners, one thing that stood out for me in the game as well yesterday was how well David De Gea played. He made some real crucial saves, and this is off the back of another good game against Newcastle. Just off the top of my head, I don't think he's really put a foot wrong this season, given the emergence of Dean Henderson. So do you think this is the old De Gea that we're seeing now? Do you reckon he's back?
We said before what needed to happen is to pit them against each other and let them fight. And at the end of the day, whoever's the last man standing will be the one that keeps their spot in the team, and the other one next year, I'm sure, will probably want to leave. So it's worked out for the best. He's improved finally because Romero wasn't really giving much competition. It was okay, but was happy to be a number 2. A good performance again yesterday. I mean, he has made mistakes. I don't think we can really forget that. He has made a few mistakes, even this year. Just silly little errors, but that's part and parcel of what comes with being a goalkeeper sometimes. But yeah, all in all, pretty impressed with him, and I can't really complain about his performance yesterday. He was fantastic.
Yeah, definitely a solid display. Now, sort of moving forward up the pitch, you mentioned Henry previously about how well the defence did. Now, no Maguire was a big statement, especially given how he played against Newcastle, but that defence, to say the experience and the quality that was actually in there, I think blew everyone away. Now, just dive into what they did so well.
Yeah, I don't know really. They just defended absolutely brilliantly. It's hard to sort of break it down and hyper-analyse it to sort of a T and look at every clearance and every tackle, but it just worked really well together. I thought Lindelof was really good last night as well, and obviously it's someone who's caught a lot of criticism, and rightly so, for some big mistakes and looking sort of weak, especially aerially. And last night we saw sort of no signs of that really. Every cross that came in, he was heading away well. It stuck to his man brilliantly and just did brilliantly. And same with Axel Tuanzebe, who obviously absolutely shackled Mbappe. Couldn't get in behind him at all, and use his pace due to sort of Tuanzebe, and obviously Aaron Wan-Bissaka as well. A man who I've defended massively. I think people like to sort of talk about his shortcomings going forward. When you've got a left wing back on the other side that can actually go forward, like we've now got in Alex Telles, who was obviously pretty good last night as well. Some brilliant deliveries from him. Then you will then see that Wan-Bissaka doesn't need to be this all-encompassing sort of marauding right back like Trent Alexander-Arnold. You can have a defensive fullback on one side as long as you've got sort of an attacking one on the other side. And I think we saw that last night, that Wan-Bissaka did absolutely excellently, and obviously that massive tackle on I think it was Kylian Mbappe, wasn't it? It wasn't Neymar. I think it was Mbappe, sort of about to slam it near post, and obviously with a fantastic tackle to stop him. But yeah, I just thought it was a really, really good defensive performance on every level. You can't fault any of that back five. They all did really well last night.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very interesting to see how well, that combination of Wan-Bissaka and Axel Tuanzebe sort of pocketed the most expensive front line ever created. It was really, really nice to see 2 young English lads just absolutely striving on European stage. Now, we switched to a back five, which, accommodated Luke Shaw in that left back position. Alex Telles obviously made his debut. Now, it seemed to work very well. Luke Shaw's caught a lot of stick this season at left back. But, he seemed, every time he's played in that left centre back role, he's sort of, he's done a lot better. I think that's fair to say. Now, Henners, do you think this is a system, given the acquisition of Telles now, that we could really push on and utilise later in the season?
Yes and no, because we were playing against a understrength PSG side. I think people forget that. You look at the players they've got in there. Their back line was Florenzi, Diallo, Kimpembe, and Kurzawa. Kurzawa's shit. Kimpembe's, decent player, but prone to a bad tackle. Diallo's new. Florenzi's very attacking, and as we mentioned before, that midfield three that they had was, I don't know. It was like, I'd say 1 out of 3 played well. The other 2 are pretty pointless. They didn't do anything. So the only good thing about their team was the front line, and we did well against that. That back 3 though that we played, it was impressive. I can't lie, it was impressive. I wasn't particularly hopeful going into the game because they can be exposed if you put 4 up against 3. They can be exposed, but obviously their midfield was just useless. So but we won't play against that same PSG side next time because they'll have players back and players like Icardi, and then they'll probably drop Di Maria or Neymar into a 10 role, which that becomes a bit of a problem. So it'll be a different side we're playing against. So we can't really forget how good they can be.
I think that's sort of fair enough. But do you think in the Premier League and going forward domestically, you're not going to come up against teams even as strong as PSG were yesterday in our division? So is it a system that we could use? It's scrapping the upcoming reverse fixture against PSG. Is this something that United can now utilise, especially with the attacking intent of Alex Telles that we now have to replace Luke Shaw at left back?
Yes, I'd say it's a system we can use, but it takes away another attacker. I know you get wing backs in Telles and Wan-Bissaka, but it does eliminate your attacking options. You're almost relying on a counter attack, and if you're against the lower side, then that will not work. It just won't, because they'll play low block and you've got essentially 5 defenders. So it won't work against lower teams. But yeah, as Waz just said, it shouldn't be a default system for United. We should be going with more attacking players against Prem sides, because even at the weekend, Chelsea defensively are absolutely awful. We should be going gun-ho at that team. We could kill them 6-0 if we really wanted to in that game. I'm pretty certain of that. If they start Kepa, maybe 9. So yeah, I'm pretty confident if we go attacking against them. But if we sit back, I know Jorginho will keep the ball and stuff. But if we sit back against sides, it might work, but one of these days we will come unstuck against a better side. And Chelsea like to get in behind, and we're not notorious for pace at the back. So,
one final question for you then, Hannes, before your little speech is over. Do we stay at back 5 or go to back 4?
Back 4 against Chelsea. I think you go from what have you? I know the system worked this weekend. I think you will stick with the back 5, but I think you should go for a back 4. And go and attack that team, because I'm telling you, defensively, they are all over the shop. They only managed to get a draw against Sevilla. I know we got knocked out by them, but Sevilla are notoriously crap away from home. So, I say go gun-ho on that team, and you can rip them apart.
Fair enough. Now, obviously the big news coming into the game was Bruno Fernandes as captain. Now, I think it's fair to say that his performance was pretty worthy of that armband. I think he was very influential, even despite his goal. Obviously showed great character to retake that penalty, especially after 2 misses in a row. Now, I'll come to you, Henry. Were you surprised by how much we actually took the game to PSG? Because I was expecting to completely sit off and try and hit them on the counter, but there were long periods of possession that we had where we were, completely on top.
No, I was surprised, actually. I think the last time we sort of went to the Parc des Princes, obviously a fantastic night. I think on the night, what did we win? Did we win 3-1 on the night, I think? I can't really remember, to be honest.
We did.
So it was a Lukaku brace, wasn't it, and a Rashford. But I think we had more chances last night than we did in that game, really. I think that was a bit of a different performance. As you say, we did. We definitely were playing a counter-attacking style with the 5 at the back. But as you say, when we did counter, it was sort of prolonged spells of pressure. Taking quite a few shots, and I think we had the same amount of shots as PSG actually on the night, which is sort of telling, really, isn't it? Away from home, especially the 5 back. I think I was slightly surprised. It was obviously a bit of a different performance, but the same outcome as the last time we went there. But yeah, it was brilliant to see. It was obviously good to see. Obviously when we sort of tried to go to Spurs and obviously got absolutely hammered 6-1. It's good to see that sort of confidence is still there in some forms. Obviously, Rashford and Martial, had the largely silent against Spurs. Obviously, Martial got sent off, and then. But last night, I wasn't massively impressed by Martial's performance last night, actually, despite him winning the penalty. But still, the confidence sort of going forward was good to see. Yeah, and I was, as you say, I was slightly surprised how we approached it, really. But yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely nice to sort of see him take the game to a big team for once, rather than just sitting back and deploying the counter all the time. But we've got a very good question here from the comments, which is saying, do we stick with Axel and Lindelof, or do we bring Maguire back in now? You raised a good point that given how long Tuanzebe's been out, do you see him starting 2 games in a row? I'll come to you first, Henry. Do you see Solskjaer sticking with him 2 games in a row and risking re-aggravating that injury, especially now that we've seen he can be so important to this team? Or do you stick to your guns that have proved so well previously?
Sorry, I thought you got the Henrys confused there for a second. No, I don't know. It is a tough one. I personally would keep Axel in there. I think he's earned his spot with the way he played. But as you say, hasn't played in something like 307 days or something. I think I saw Colchester last game he played. So yeah, it is a tough one. It's a tough decision to make whether or not Maguire. Is there a real knock there, or was it sort of a mental thing to leave him out? I'm not too sure on that. If it's a knock, we'll have to see if he's back for Chelsea. But if it was just a question of not about fitness, I think you'd 100% have to start Axel Tuanzebe. I think he's earned it from the way he played last night. And Maguire's form this season obviously hasn't been great. Off the back of a good game against Newcastle though, so we'll have to see what happens. But I personally, not considering fitness, I'd say it's a no-brainer to start Axel. But yeah, we'll have to see whether or not Maguire's back and whether or not Ollie wants to risk playing Tuanzebe twice in a row, as Jordan said.
Yeah, it would definitely be an interesting thing to look out for. Now, Henners, the key thing I think for United going forward as well, when it got to about the 60th minute, was the strength that we had on the bench. Now, as frustrating as it was to not see Van der Beek start, it was definitely the right call along with Pogba. But Pogba came on and changed the game. I think it's fair to say, from when Pogba arrived, we really started taking the game to PSG, and he created the most chances on the pitch, despite only playing less than 25 minutes. So that just says it all. So, is this a performance that can kickstart Pogba's career? But not career, sorry, his season, because so far he's been pretty wayward.
I really couldn't tell you. That's one thing that so unpredictable with Pogba at the moment. It can, but he's got to play against the right team to open him up in those kind of positions. And I mean, the reality is he was always going to bully whoever was in midfield, because I know Pereira is quite a big guy, but he's going to bully whoever's there. So he did well in the strength department and well in the creativity side of things. I thought he was impressive, but I'm not sure whether it's going to kickstart things, because I think he played well only because to a level they were a little bit kind of tired and they were going for the game as well. So when things open up and you've got a box-to-box midfielder like Pogba, you're more than capable of doing anything against teams like that. So I think that's why it played into his hands, but he needs to perform more consistently for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But I'll come to you, Henry. It sort of raises a question. He came on as a sub and made an instant impact. We saw against Spurs after Project Restart that he came on as a sub and completely changed the game. And then even looking back, there's that home fixture against Newcastle where Sanchez won us the game late on, where he came on and completely changed the game. Now, is it a problem that he has more of an impact off the bench than he does as a starting player, especially given his caliber?
I mean, it definitely is. As you say, you've given fine examples there of times when he's come off the bench and has changed the game. And I think you've got to give credit to Ollie as well for that, by the way. The way Pogba was deployed last night was completely perfect. I definitely wouldn't have started him. I think that was the correct decision to make. As you say, I was disappointed not to see Van der Beek start, but then actually, we saw why not as the game sort of went on. Starting with Fred and McTominay more tenacious, then sort of, as you say, when the players get a bit more tired, deploy Pogba, bring him on and sort of watch him create, and he did that excellently. But it definitely is a problem. I think from when he's been starting this season, he hasn't been good enough. I think everyone's sort of in agreement to that the Pogba hasn't been good enough at all this season, sort of a bit sloppy, getting caught in possession. You know, you've got the problem with the sort of body language that people complain about, sort of looking disinterested. And no signs of that when he comes off the bench. As you say, he's fresh. He sort of performs much better. You know, they were there for the taking, PSG last night in the end with that poor midfield that we've already alluded to, and he did that job excellently. But it's definitely a problem. Whether I'd start him against Chelsea or not, I'm not too sure. We'll have to see if he sets up with a similar sort of back five, more defensive and tenacious midfield with sort of Fred and McTominay, and whether or not he finally decides to bring Van der Beek into the starting lineup, which will be interesting. But we'll have to see. But no, I think you're spot on. It definitely is a problem, and hopefully, you know, he can iron it out or whatever. Because, you know, when he's on top form, as we saw last night, you know, he's a massive asset for us.
Definitely, I think that goes without saying. Now, I'll bring up a comment that was made. You know, he's saying that Pogba plays best to the left of a midfield three, and it's also, we've seen on international duty that Fernandes impacts the game a lot more as the right of a midfield three. Now, is this not, you know, more than obvious to onlookers that, you know, we could easily play Pogba on the left of a sort of flat three, Fernandes on the right of a flat three, and then a very, you know, mobile holding midfielder in between them to cover the defensive side of things? Would that not, well, Hennes, I'll come to you, would that not sort of make sense in a way?
Yeah, it would, but again, it depends on the team you're playing against. You've got to look at the opposition before you make decisions on what team you're going to put out. But you know, 4-3-3 can be really threatening. And Jordan, I think you're probably right in terms of Fred. He probably does deserve a shot. Again, as I said, I know I've been very critical of him, and I'm very critical of some South American players because although ours don't seem to do it, but I'm just going to bring up a little kind of thing that ticks me off a little bit about South American players. They are scumbags, a lot of them. And that's just true because they'll dive. We saw it last night with Neymar and Di Maria, two of the most pathetic players I've ever seen play in the Champions League. They're throwing themselves around and have the audacity to yell at the referee as well so they can go do one there. I can't stand them. They do my head in. And we saw Lamela getting Martial sent off, you know, a little tap on the face. I know it was a red card, but a little tap on the face and he goes down like he's been shot. So it seems to be a recurring theme with them. But yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
Yeah, just to clarify, Hennes is on about the style of play. He's not just massively xenophobic to South American players. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about is obviously Van der Beek was left on the bench again. I think he's made one start so far this season, and that was in the Carabao Cup against Luton. Now, Henry, will we see him against Chelsea? And, you know, if we don't see him against Chelsea again, I'm struggling to see the point in signing him. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't seem like Solskjaer wanted to sign him. So, you know, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I know what you mean. It's an interesting one. I think when we signed him, I think, you know, quite a few of us were sort of surprised that he was sort of the first signing. It's a profile that we've already got, really, isn't it? You know, Pogba, Fernandes, these sort of more progressive or seen as more progressive midfielders, and then Van der Beek comes in as the first signing, a little bit baffling. And then you think, you know, you've seen these sort of substitute performances, and you think, you know, especially after that Spurs game, you think surely he starts the next game. And obviously didn't start against Newcastle. Came off the bench and performed brilliantly. You know, like he has done every time. Really, every time he's come off the bench, he's been excellent. And you think after that Spurs game, he would have earned himself a start with how sort of terrible that game was. You think surely now is the time to bring him in. He obviously didn't. So I don't know. It's an interesting one, really. It's even more of a headache now after last night, how well the midfield played. I think if McTominay and Fred had been pulled, then I think it'd have been a no-brainer. Sort of Van der Beek comes in on Saturday against Chelsea, but Fred and McTominay, obviously, as we've already sort of said over and over again, were really good. So it's a tough decision now. I can't see him starting, if I'm honest. I think after last night, how good the midfield was. It'll be interesting to see what he does with Pogba as well, whether or not he decides to start him after obviously a good cameo last night. But yeah, personally, in my opinion, I don't think he will start, unfortunately. And as you say, it could end up getting a bit messy. I know his agent, or sort of part of his agency, has had some things to say already. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But he's done well enough to earn a start. But then after last night, I struggled to see him making a team on Saturday.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? But from a selfish sort of fan point of view, it's very nice to have this problem where you've got a midfield absolutely stacked with quality. I can't really remember the last time we said that. You know, strength in depth anyway. Obviously, last season after Bruno came in, we had a very strong midfield, but one injury to anyone, and and that was sort of it. Now we've got this, Fred and McTominay coming good, and then Matic is still to come into the team. I know he's still got something to offer at least, and you've obviously got Van der Beek, Bruno, and Pogba. But yeah, it's a nice problem to have. But we'll move on then, because
really quickly.
Yeah, that's fine.
I wasn't wrong again about Van der Beek. I said at the time, what was the point? Genuinely, what was the point? Because he's played like 4 minutes for us. And unless it's in cup games, I don't see him playing. And we spent 35 million on him. Could have spent that on a little bit more of a experienced winger, or it baffles me. It really does. Frustrating as well, because I really wanted to be wrong when I said that it seemed like a bit of a pointless signing. I said it, I think, on the Phil Brown podcast. I said it seemed like a bit of a pointless signing at the time. And now, as you said, was it really necessary, a necessity to buy him? I don't think it was.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a tough one, because he's obviously a player of quality, and you want to see him in the team and doing well. But I don't think he was Solskjaer's signing at all. I think he was a signing to get fans off the back of the board who were just completely incompetent in the Sancho deal. Now we'll move on. We'll sort of stick with the European theme. Now there's a lot more talks than ever before, really, about the potential of a European Super League. Now it sounds like they're going to call it the European Premier League. But yeah, I'll just sort of I'll see if this works. I can't promise it will, but basically what we're looking at is, well, what Sky's put it as is that it's going to be 12 teams, sort of 12 staple teams in the league that are from all the top countries in Europe. So England, France, Spain, Germany, and Italy, and they're going to be sort of classed as the founders. Now it's going to be a team of about 18, so there'll be 6 spots available for other teams that aren't classed as the founders. Now there'll be promotion and relegation. It's saying the founding clubs cannot be relegated for 20 years. So yeah, there'll be 6 places available through either promotion or relegation. Now, how that'll work, I'm not quite sure, but yeah, it's basically, it's looking like it's going to be one big Champions League that's played over a number of countries, not necessarily in Europe as well. We're going to switch to games in America and games to Dubai and all sorts of things. But we briefly spoke about it in a previous podcast, Henners. Now, what are your sort of thoughts on this idea of a European Super League?
The best way, clearly, for these clubs, which they think is right, which is completely wrong, the best way to make friends in the Premier League is just to decide you can bum off the rest of the teams. I know it's a European Super League, and obviously it's not the same as the Prem, and we'll still have the Premier League there and stuff. But in terms of an incentive to get top 4 and for sides to build and get a good manager in, the best way to do that is obviously just to create your own league. What a stupid decision! I know it's the bloody Americans again. I'm sorry if it's true. I'm sorry, it's so true. United and Liverpool in talks of a kind of reformed Premier League, and then that doesn't work. So I guess what we'll do is we'll just reform Europe now. What a stupid decision! I don't know who's making these calls, but it is absolutely brainless, and it's so selfish. And I'm fed up of seeing these. You need to reform everything, but that gives all the other clubs that want to, we've seen Ferencváros against Barca away. That was the biggest game in like 30 years for that club, and we're just going to shit all over it by deciding to create this new, European league that we want to create, or the United and Liverpool owners want to create for more money. As if they're not greedy enough as it is, they're just deciding to go and take money off everyone else now as well. It's utterly ridiculous. I'm fed up of seeing stuff like that. I really am.
Yeah. It's sort of sickening to see the way football's going, especially given the incentive for most teams to join this Super League is obviously the sort of the purse that's going into it. The cash injection of approximately 6 billion, I believe. So that's obviously gonna flash up like a light in the Glazers' head anyway. Yeah, very money orientated. But Henry, I'll come to you. What are your thoughts on things?
I think Hennes has sort of hit the nail on the head with it. Really, it's just another form of alienation, really, for fans, for smaller clubs, for anyone other than the top elite, anyone sort of other than owned by sort of these big, as you say, the American businessmen. It does seem to be sort of this move from American owners to try and sort of move towards sort of nearer the end, sort of the NFL and the sort of American franchise building, the way they do things over there, which is a thing I don't like. I like the current format. Call me a traditionalist. I like the way everything's set up, and I didn't like the idea of getting rid of the League Cup and the Community Shield as well. I think they're sort of staples of English football. You can say that they're outdated. I completely disagree. Trophies are trophies, and they're part of the game. They're part of the English game. That they've always been here. They should be here to stay. And I think the current, I don't see this need to change the current format. I think it's fine the way it is. I don't know why they I obviously do know why they want to change it, because as you say, the money, this big purse that everyone sort of licks their lips at when they think about it, the sort of big businessmen. But yeah, no, I completely agree with what Hennes has said. It's another form of alienation. It's another sort of corporate move. And as you say, this idea of games in Dubai in America, it's just completely sort of alienating sort of fans. And I said it with sort of the boxing as well, which was Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua, two big British heavyweights, would have been one of the, will be, I think it still will happen, will be one of the biggest British fights in years. And they're talking about having that in Dubai. It's completely baffles me, these sort of business decisions in sport. It's incredibly upsetting. I think the backlash has been good. Hopefully we can just sort of try and just push this horrible capitalist business driven sort of motive away from football, because it's as you see, as I mentioned in other sports, it's sort of plaguing them as well. But yeah, I think Hennes is bang on. It's complete alienation and complete rubbish, and I think the current format should be stuck with.
Yeah, definitely. I think one point I will make, I mean, by no means in favour of this league, but one point, sort of towards the teams that are pushing for it is, it sort of goes back to the point that Robin was making yesterday, Henry, where it's certain teams across Europe seem to have outgrown the league. So, the likes of PSG and Bayern Munich and Real Madrid and Barca. So, I think the idea of having a competitive league every year where they're actually challenged, I think that could somewhat appeal to them as well. But yeah, just the logistics of it are not thought out well at all, especially from a fan perspective. It's a horribly thought out plan that will probably get pushed ahead because, money talks, doesn't it? Now, it's worth noting that Sky Sports have reported that UEFA are strongly against this idea.
FIFA are with it, though.
Yeah.
People,
so that's
people want this to happen.
That's the problem. Now, yeah, it's bad, very bad. But Hennes, is this just a sign of the times that the fans are no longer important? We're seeing clubs. I know United make a £4 million loss every game that fans aren't in the stadium, but that's not a lot to them. So, do clubs like this even, from their perspective, do they really even need fans at this point?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Yes, I wouldn't say the club themselves need the fans. The players do. The players and the management, they all want the fans in the ground. Ed Woodward and co, I'm sure probably, in terms of money, if it doesn't make a difference, they wouldn't want the fans in the ground, especially considering last year they were chanting for him to die. So I wouldn't say that's a really positive thing for them. But yeah, in terms of fans, it goes to show they really don't count. And, the best, as I said before, the best way to keep fans happy is just to piss them off even more and make everyone in the Premier League hate you for, now, we're in the same, obviously, people hate the Glazers and they FSG are hated at Liverpool to a degree. Obviously, they won titles and stuff, but they're not liked, and they're both obviously American. They're very business orientated. But the best way to make more friends in the Premier League and people obviously they don't want people to take notice of what they're doing. The best way to do that is just to create a new European Super League and just to annoy every single other team that decide, if we don't have Leicester in that Super League, then they wouldn't want to compete for the top four anyway. What's the point? So no one would spend any money. You're just competing for places that don't even matter. So there's no incentive to do well in the Premier League, and it makes it less competitive. So what's the point? What is the point? You're just going to ostracize everyone else, and you're just going to irritate everyone else as well. So it's just completely ridiculous, and it's a business decision, but morally just completely way off it.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I'll bring up this comment from Waz that he's just made, because it's a very good point that he's making. He's basically saying that the distance between small clubs and big clubs is ever increasing, and it's a social issue as well. We've seen reports in, like, because of coronavirus, the sort of jobless rate and homeless rate is increasing among the working class, and yet a lot of the top 1% have seen their fortunes increase tenfold. Now, it's just sort of indicative of the world that we live in at the minute, isn't it? I'll come to you, Henry. That there's no care for the disparity between the top and the bottom, whether it's in football or life in general.
No, yeah, 100%. And I think just it's just going back to sort of the point on fans as well. Is that obviously football clubs, they need fans. We've seen that the revenue's massively dropped from match day, but I think there's just this awareness, especially with the Glazers, I think that we're all sort of aware of as well, that they could do absolutely anything they wanted. They could make the worst decision. I don't know what the worst decision possibly for Manchester United could be. They could rename the stadium or something like that, or they could rename the club, or they could put Chevrolet badges on the actual United crest. Fans would still fill the stadium. They can do anything they want, and there's that awareness of that power. They know that the big clubs, and it's the same at Liverpool, and it's the same at Arsenal with Kroenke or whatever he's called, that they can do absolutely whatever they want, and they will still pack the stadiums, and they will still sell the shirts, and they will still sell all the other various memorabilia, and they'll still bring in the money. They've got just complete control over the fans, and I think we're seeing that there isn't a care for fans. There were times over lockdown where United were making good decisions, and you think finally there's a bit of empathy there, and then they start sort of supporting these claims and sort of starting to undo all the work that they did before. And there is a massive disparity now between the top and the bottom. I mean, that there's always going to be that, I'm afraid. Some clubs are bigger than others. There needs to be awareness of that. But as you say, this lack of, as you say, lack of care, lack of sort of empathy in the entire game, and this sort of increasing focus on the financial aspect is massively sad. And hopefully this continued backlash, and hopefully we can get our voices heard as fans and sort of try and drive away from this. But yeah, it's looking bleak for the times ahead, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely looking bleak. But I'll bring this comment up from Sam, because it's another good point. He's saying, you feel that it will continue to improve by playing the best in Europe. The best playing the best is going to get the best out of the players. So it means they're going to invest further into academies and stadiums to continue to fight to be the best. And I think that's part of the problem. You put in, if these teams keep improving, you'll funnel more money into them, and the gap will keep getting wider and wider and wider, won't it? I think it's sort of a never-ending cycle of, once you separate these teams anyway, it's a never-ending cycle of the best become better, and every team underneath become less financially stable, less able to keep up. Because if there's all this money going into this European Super League, there surely can't be as many funds available to other associations such as the FA and the French League to offer the rest of their teams, because the other teams aren't going to be earning them anywhere near as much money. The Premier League's going to lose all its appeal if this Super League comes out, and finances for everyone else is going to go down. So it's really sort of a scary thing to think about at all. Yeah. So anyone got anything to add before we move on?
Yeah, ever so quickly. In terms of the divide, I thought as a nation and as the Premier League and stuff, I thought we were trying to kind of shorten that gap and not widen it. The worst thing you can do to shorten a gap is to create a new European Super League where all the clubs get millions and millions of pounds. I know you talk about improving academies and stuff. What academies are you going to improve? The clubs that are better? I know it will just make them better and better and better. It will just make the Premier League completely pointless. You might as well not have it there, because other clubs won't have the money to invest. So it will just be a straight up shootout for who's going to be in the Premier League and who's not. And then the other clubs will just run away with everything. We saw the gap last year. The gap last year was almost depressing between Liverpool and City. And you want to widen that gap from the top 6 down to everyone else. You want to widen that gap by like 30, 40 points a year. It just makes absolutely zero sense to me.
Absolutely. Henry, anything else?
No, I think you've said all that needs to be said. Really, it's just a question of sort of so many questions. Over really, what would it replace? Would it replace Champions League? What would it mean for the Premier League? But and how you qualify for it as well, which I'm not sure if I'm properly read up on it, to be honest. But if they're just picking teams based on sort of reputation, I mean that's just unfair, isn't it? To sort of just pick teams out of a hat. Yeah, as you say, sort of clubs like Leicester, these sort of sides that are on sort of the verge of, challenge. Last season they were at least sort of the verge of challenging for things, and then they get cut out, and then the clubs above them get this massive funding from the other league. It does all just seem unfair and just stupid and business driven, unfortunately.
Absolutely, but that's just the way football's going now, isn't it? Now, before we move on to our last topic, I'll put a little shameless plug in because we've got more listeners than we usually do. So if you've enjoyed the podcast so far, feel free to subscribe. It'd mean the world to us. We're only a small podcast trying to grow. But moving on, we'll switch over to Merseyside, and our thoughts and prayers are with them because Virgil van Dijk is officially the first player to ever get an injury. So thoughts are with him and his family. I hope he comes out of this tough time. Now, Henners, I know you undoubtedly will have a lot to say about this, so, take the floor.
Oh, where do I begin with this lot? Just as you think they couldn't get any worse, they're now trying to file for criminal charges against someone that made a challenge, someone that made a tackle. Seriously, how embarrassing can you get? And they are right, they always say, oh, we're Scouse, not English. Well, yeah, you are, because we don't really be part of it anymore because we can't be asked. You lot are just embarrassing. I know it's only probably 25%, but that 25% is 25% too many. It's actually embarrassing. It's just, I just don't understand it. The lack of brain cells, it baffles me. It really does. How can you possibly want to file for criminal charges and then you're saying, oh, get well soon, Virgil. Oh, yeah, it's not like anyone's had a career-ending injury before. This isn't even career-ending either. It's like 6 or 7 months. So they're saying, oh, yeah, Pickford, as I mentioned before to you guys, that ESPN journalist that said, oh, Pickford should be banned for 8 months, same time as Van Dijk. Well, he didn't go into the challenge to break his leg. He didn't. He went in to win the ball, and he just got it horribly wrong, and that happens sometimes in football. I just think the shameless, embarrassing, ridiculously stupid nature of these Scouse fans is just unbelievable, and I can't stand it. I look at some of the tweets and I just turn my phone off. What is the point in interacting with these? You might as well talk to a bloody tree.
Yeah, I think it's confusing. Now, Henry, you obviously as you're a big football Twitter account now, so I imagine you've grown up a bit of an ability to be an absolute wind-up merchant. So I'd like you to just sort of say your piece on what's going on over on Merseyside right now.
No, I think Hannah's has hit the nail on the head once more, to be honest. It is just absolutely ridiculous. Just all of it from top to bottom, from the Liverpool Echo asking for messages to be sent to him and stuff like that, from Virgil van Dijk himself putting out some sort of ridiculous statement as if he sort of got a life-changing injury. All of it's absurd, and Liverpool fans as well threatening Pickford to tell him to watch his back and stuff like that. And then some of it is just it is absolutely stupid, as you say. And we were saying before the podcast, we've seen injuries like this before. That video that's going around on Twitter at the minute of the reaction at the time on Match of the Day to Eduardo's injury, completely different to what it is now, and why? Is it this sort of the Liverpool bias, Virgil van Dijk being this sort of media darling? Probably. I think that's probably why we're sort of even talking about this, to be honest. Injuries happen, bad tackles happen in football. Should Pickford have been punished on the pitch for that? Maybe, but why would you, calls for him to be banned for 7 to 8 months in the same time that Van Dijk sort of got his injury? Was it an intentional tackle to hurt Van Dijk? Maybe. Was it intentional to rupture his ACL? Most certainly not. I think we've just got to be realistic about it and stop being so sort of ridiculous. Football's a contact sport. These things happen. The example we gave before the podcast, talking to you two lads, was the Luke Shaw thing, no one had a word to say about that. It was seen as this unfortunate thing. It's part of football. It's very sad, but it happens. I mean, and that's the attitude that we should be having. Why we're talking about, bans and whatever, and referees being permanently sacked for not sort of punishing players as well. I don't know. It's all absolutely ridiculous, and it's sort of typical Liverpool, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that goes without saying. Now, I think in fairness to Jordan Henderson, now it was, you look back at it on a replay and it was a horrendous challenge. But, I've seen somewhere that they were analysing it, and I don't think he goes in there with the intent to hurt him at all. I think it's a big game. The stakes are high. As a goalkeeper, it's probably the most pressured position in the world as well. So he's gone out to collect this ball. He's seen Van Dijk last minute and realised he's not going to get there. Now he has a choice to make. He either backs off and lets Van Dijk tap it in, because he doesn't know Van Dijk's offside at all, does he? He either backs off and lets Van Dijk take a shot, unchallenged, and it's almost a definite goal, or he goes in there and makes life as difficult for Van Dijk as possible. Now I think as a goalkeeper he made the right decision. Obviously, the injury and the challenge itself was pretty poor, well, to say the least, and the injury is very unfortunate, but as a goalkeeper, he did everything he had to do. Now, the thing that really worries me is the fact the Liverpool players' response to this. There's been no, especially given the death threats that Jordan Pickford's received and his family have received as well. You'd expect, given the circumstances, a couple of Liverpool players to say, "Fair enough, it was a bad challenge, but just sort of lay off him a bit."
Yeah,
he's not gone out to hurt him, but there's been none of that. I think in the media, Liverpool players have been as accusatory as the Liverpool fans have been, and that's done nothing at all for his image. Now, Victim FC, a very weird fan base and all that, but what does this say about their fan base, Hannah? And the players of the team, sorry.
Yeah, well, it says a lot. We've mentioned it before that they were pro Suarez when he was racist to someone. So these lot don't surprise me with anything they do. I saw an interesting video of the Van Dijk statement with some sort of like Titanic music to it. What the fuck's that? Seriously, how embarrassing that they're a bunch of cockroaches, these Liverpool fans. I genuinely can't speak lowly enough of them. And as it goes for the players, they're all going, "Oh, get well soon." Well, he hasn't been shot. He hasn't been, his head hasn't been cut off. "Oh, I hope you recover really well." "Oh yeah, it's going to be a very long road back." It's not even, it's not even a year. We've seen so many worse injuries than that. It's not even a year, and these lot are just crying about everything. And I think the worst thing, I think they're just more upset about this because, the reality is that they've just lost their best player. They've just lost their best player, and they've probably, I don't want to jinx it because they might win the league, but they probably just shit up their chance of winning the league as well. So as far as Jordan Pickford goes, he can't do anything else. I've played as a goalkeeper before, and you do stupid challenges, you make stupid challenges. There's not a lot you can do. It happens. And Waz is completely right. This is football. It happens. It's not a criminal thing to do. The Richarlison one, I mean, that was just funny. That was just like, I'm gonna kick you knee high whether you like it or not. So Ancelotti must have gave some of their players steroids before the game or something, because they just went out there to kick the shit out of those players. And that's football. It happens. Suck it up, get over it, stop being whiny little bitches, and just face reality. You lost your centre half. Either you go buy a new one, or you stick with Joel Matip and Joe Gomez, which you shipped 7 to Villa with them lot, even with Van Dijk at the back. So good luck.
Yeah, you've led me pretty nicely onto my next point then, because I don't know if Alisson's back yet. I'm fairly sure he's still injured, so they're stuck with Adrian. Now, Van Dijk is very clearly Liverpool's key player in that team. The impact he had as soon as he arrived was, unimaginable. Now, they're left with Joe Gomez, whose defensive capabilities are questionable, and Joel Matip, who's never really been a first teamer. So, Henry, how do you think this will affect Liverpool going forward? And do you think they can still be classed as title contenders?
I think it'd be extremely sort of harsh to completely rule them out, especially with how open the league is this year. I think they're definitely still in with a shout, but it's obviously going to be massive. I think everyone would agree with that. Van Dijk's obviously a staple to their team. He's been absolutely phenomenal for the past couple of years. Obviously had these blip performances, and we all like to joke, don't we, about sort of the Villa shipping 7, etc. But we all know how good a centre half he is. He's established himself as one of, if not the best centre back in the world over the past couple of years. And when you lose a player of that calibre, it's obviously going to affect you. I think on a mental level as well, he is a bit of a leader. He does sort of marshal that defence, and I think you definitely lose a spine when you take a player like that out of a defence. As you say, the idea of Matip and Gomez as a centre back pairing, apparently now Matip maybe even might have a knock. I saw somewhere, I'm not sure how reliable that was, but even so, sort of Matip and Gomez, you've got no spine there really, have you? That is not a title winning centre back partnership. I might eat my words there, and they go on to win the league, but I highly doubt it. I think it'd be rude to write them off, but yeah, it's definitely gonna have a massive impact on them.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, I'll just, because we're running out of time, I know you've got to run off, Henry. So, looking forward to the rest of the season, I'll come to you first, Henners. Where will Liverpool finish given this new this news?
That's a really good question, actually. I'm really not sure, because it could go either way. As Henry mentioned, it could go either way. They could win the league still. But after that performance, and after watching Joe Gomez play centre-half, I've said before I don't rate him. Maybe he's going through a bad patch, but, we all think, Maguire was going through a bad patch, and then he came out the end of it. So he could come out the end of it a better player, but they need quality players now. They don't need Butterfingers in goal, because genuinely, I know I heard claims from people that I'm not going to name, but people that probably watch this, saying that Adrian was the best second keeper up with Romero last year. Well, you guys ate yours, didn't you? He knocked you out the Champions League. He managed to mess up a back pass against Villa as well. I mean, a keeper that can't play a 5-yard pass and picks out the one attacker in the box, you've got a problem there. So they've got another month of that. So, and to that I say, good luck, guys, because we've been through it all. So just suck it up. And at the end of the day, they might not win the league now. And I hope they don't win the league now. And I want to watch Liverpool fans cry more, because I think it's funny. And I think it's entertaining as well. Just inject it more, my friend. Inject it more.
Absolutely, absolutely. Henry, what are you thinking for Liverpool for the rest of the season?
It is hard. The league's an absolute mess this year, really, and everyone's sort of slipping up here and there, and these sort of ridiculous, outlandish results, becoming accustomed to them now. I still think Spurs are in with a massive shout for the league. I know obviously they threw that 3 points away against West Ham quite well, but extremely poorly. Very rare to see that from a Jose side, so there's perhaps a mentality problem there. But I still back Spurs to do well. I think we're yet to see that resurgence from City that I think is going to happen. I think it's between them three, really. Those are my contenders. I think Everton are bound to drop off. Obviously, Villa are going to drop off. We can't talk about them as title contenders. We obviously, I don't think have got enough. I think everyone agree with that. And Chelsea, I think, are miles off it. I think, massively sort of overhyped before the season. I always thought there was going to be a problem there with sort of Lampard and this big money team sort of gelling and actually becoming a proper football side. So, yeah, I think it's probably about third for Liverpool would be my prediction. But obviously, as we've said, they might slip in and go win the league. With the way the league's going, anything can happen. But yeah, I think the title race is going to be between those three for me: City, Liverpool, and Spurs.
Yeah, it's definitely going to make for an interesting season, isn't it? Because City look off the pace this season as well. They got battered by Leicester. They dropped points against Leeds. It's not something you expect from a Guardiola side. But I think on Liverpool, the problem for me, like from a United point of view, is they have the ability to outscore teams. They could concede 4 and still score 5 and win the game. That's the problem I have, especially with Thiago now coming into the side. He seems like he's fitting incredibly well. We saw that against Everton. And, you're always going to have that threat of Salah, Mane and Firmino up front. Whether Firmino's a threat or not in front of goal, that's a different perspective. But, yeah, I think this injury won't affect them as much as we sort of think it will, because that attacking threat is still there. But, if Salah or Mane get ruled out for any sort of length of time now, then they're really going to be on the ropes. But, going back to what Henry was was saying about Chelsea. It goes back to what the Phil Brown podcast that we did, where he was saying, don't be jealous of a team that's signing 7 players in a window because one, it's going to be very hard to gel, and two, that dressing room is going to be split, and it shows that it's not a team that are where they want to be. And I think we're seeing that they've shown real signs of quality, which you'd expect with the players they've brought in, but they've also shown real signs of vulnerability. Come to you, Hennes. What's the matter with you?
What's the matter with me? When you see the highlights of Chelsea's game at the weekend, I think it was the weekend, wasn't it? Where they draw or something. Anyway, I watched one of those goals. It was against Southampton, wasn't it? The draw. Yeah. I watched one of those goals, and when you've got your keeper running like a headless chicken back towards the goal and running into the post, you've got a problem. You've got a serious issue with that. He cost £72 million. £72 million. That is, I mean, if there's something about reckless spending, that has got to be one of the worst signings I think we've seen in the Prem in the past 20 years. It's absolutely horrendous. So if he's in goal for them, which he was at the weekend, obviously he wasn't in the Champions League. If he plays in goal for them against us, and does what he did where someone just knocked the ball past him, he's hooning himself out at 18 yards to try and win the ball, and then scrambling back, and everyone's tripping over each other. God, if they're anything like that, they are not going to be anywhere near close to the league. And they're not scoring enough either. I don't think. I don't see it.
That's fair enough. That's a fair point. So just to round off the show then, league winners this season then. Henry, I'll come to you first.
I'm going to back Spurs just because of my affiliation and affection for Jose Mourinho. I think Spurs going forward, obviously the Kane and Son partnership is absolutely reckless this season. Phenomenal. Just the goal scoring, the sheer numbers they're putting up. Defensively, obviously there is a problem there and questions to be asked whether or not they should have gone and signed Milan Skriniar. Davinson Sanchez obviously doesn't look the best of centre half of the season, but yeah, I'm going to go Spurs, and I think that's the best possible scenario for us this season. I don't want to see City win it, obviously, and I don't want to see Liverpool win it again. So yeah, I'm going to go Spurs optimistically.
Hennes?
It's at Spurs and City. I think I was, I said, I don't know whether I've said it to you guys before, but Spurs are going to be well up there. They've got a really good front line. It's whether they can defend now, as Henry mentioned. And City will be up there again. They've got a good side. They've sorted their defence out to a degree. They've got Diaz in now, so they're looking a threat. And, maybe even Everton. Maybe they can put up a fight. You never know with these teams, and especially with a manager like Ancelotti, you never know.
Very good point. Very good point. Now I'm gonna go left field and say Everton. I think they can capitalise on this. We saw with Leicester before the drop-off that, they were the closest to Liverpool last season for a long period of time. And I think this Everton team probably have a better starting 11 than that Leicester did. They've got decent strength and depth, and they've got one of the world's best managers. So I think they're a real dark horse. I think given the circumstances, they're a dark horse. I think if City were firing on all cylinders and Liverpool were up to full strength and they want to stand a chance. But yeah, I'll make things interesting and go Everton. But that rounds us off. I think that's the end. So thank you again to Henry for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, lads. Thank you for having me on, and in the future, keen to come on again. Really enjoyed it.
Brilliant. Yeah, we'll look forward to more episodes of the United District podcast as well. Thanks to everyone who contributed. We had a lot of brilliant contributions today. It was really, really great to see. Really helped us out with this show. And
subscribe, and keep commenting, guys. Because
absolutely. Right. On that note, we'll leave it there. So we'll see you next time. Hopefully for a preview of the Chelsea game. So yeah, we'll see you later. Yeah.